had the opportunity to go on my first ever cruise, and I wanted to share my experience with you from a first timer, and also just if I liked it or not, and if I would do it again. And the particular ship that I was on was the Carnival Mardi Gras ship. And so I'm gonna do a little review of that ship. Again, this is from a perspective of a first-time cruiser, so I don't have a lot of a reference. Here we go, let's dive into this awesome cruise experience that I had. Again, first timer. And so this cruise was again on the Carnival Mardi Gras ship, and we were leaving out of the Port Canaveral, so in Orlando. We were gonna leave from Port Canaveral and we were gonna go to Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Grand Turk Islands. I've never been to those places before, and so I was excited to see those places as well and do the excursions. Also, this is also a little bit different of an experience from maybe what other people would have, because I went with an enormous singles group. So I already had a lot of people that I knew that were going, and I had a really good friend, another friend named Matt, that was going as well. So him and I were able to hang out quite a bit together, so that really helped me have a good experience on this. And so what I'm going to cover is kind of the ship itself, the amenities, things that were on board that were really fun. I'm going to cover the food and kind of my impressions of the food on the ship. And then also I'm going to cover those the ports that we visited and some of the excursions that we went on. So let's dive in. First thing I noticed when I got to the port, this cruise ship was massive. Someone told me, one of the workers on board told me that it was the equivalent of like an 18-story building. That's how tall this cruise ship was, which is pretty massive. And at one of the ports, I had the opportunity to take a photo or video of our cruise ship next to one of the other Carnival cruise ships, and ours was so much bigger. Pretty interesting. And I think our cruise ship was 9 or 10 times bigger than the Titanic, to give you a reference, which is insane. I like that it was large because there was a lot of places to explore. And so let me talk about the food and my experience with the food on board. They had a lot of stuff that was included with your cruise price, and then they had other higher end restaurants and things that you could pay extra for. I didn't do any of the extra stuff because I wanted to experience it from just not free, because I did have to pay for the cruise, but for the stuff that was included. And so on the Lido deck 16, they had, it's like a buffet style, and where I ate there pretty much every day for breakfast. I only ate there one time for lunch, and then the rest of the time I was eating other places. For dinner, our big group always met in the Palm restaurant. That's where we had a dinner every night. We sat in a table, and we kind of rotated tables each night so we can meet more people. They had other places, like they had Guy's Burger Joint on board, and I ate there twice, and I really liked Guy's Burger Joint. The burger was really, really good. And then they had Shaq's Big Chicken that was on there, and that was pretty good as well. And they had Emerald's Lounge. I didn't go to Emerald's place. And they had several others, specific restaurants. They had Guy's Pig and Anchor, which is like a little barbecue place. And that food was really good. One thing that someone told me, a friend of mine said, you're gonna love the never-ending supply of soft serve ice cream and frozen yogurt. And I did. Like, I probably had 4 to 5 ice cream cones a day. Now, I didn't fill it up like really tall. I probably only did it about that high over the cone each time. But that was really awesome. And I did manage to gain like 4 or 5 pounds on this cruise. I would have gained more if I didn't do so much walking. I averaged probably 4 or 5 miles per day just walking around on the cruise ship, and then also doing the excursions. So good thing I did all that, otherwise I would have gained a lot more weight probably. And so kind of my impressions of the food specifically, I mentioned some of those already, but in the main dining room, I wasn't super impressed. It was just okay to me. A lot of people said, oh, you're gonna love the food. For me, like, there's some things that I like. There's some, like this strawberry bisque cold soup was really good. It tasted like pretty much a melted strawberry milkshake. And so that was really good. And my first entree that I had was fried shrimp and fried rice, and I enjoyed that. I had a filet mignon one night, and it wasn't really a filet. They called it a filet, but it wasn't a filet. I've had a lot of filet mignon in my day, and this wasn't a filet. The flavor was fine, but it wasn't really a filet, even though it tasted okay. I had shrimp. A lot of times I had the shrimp, and the shrimp was really good. But there's other things like the roast beef that they had. Some of the other entrees, like they had a chicken parm, which kind of tasted like almost like chicken jerky. It was really tough and overcooked. They had a creme brulee, and it just wasn't that great. Overall, I think the appetizers were better than the main entrees, and then the desserts were just so-so in my opinion. They could have been a little bit better maybe. I've heard that the food on like Princess and Norwegian and the Disney Cruise Line, I think their food might be a little bit better. All in all, it was okay. Like, it was included. I didn't have to pay extra for those things, and so I wasn't super disappointed with the food. And there was things that I really did like about the food. And then also, like, on board the ship, which was really cool, is the amenities that they had. They had comedy shows. They had different productions that they do. Sometimes on the main pool deck, on deck 16, they would show a movie on the big screen. They had constant like live game shows, bingo, things like that. They had a sports court. They had an arcade for the kids. They had a roller coaster on top of the ship, and I tried the roller coaster. It was fun. I think it was $15 for like a 3-minute ride, but it was still pretty fun. It was fun to do a roller coaster on a cruise ship. And then they had these slides, like water slides. I didn't do the slides because the water was too cold for me. And then they had like a putt-putt or like miniature golf course on there. On the other side of the ship, they had where they called the Serenity area, which was like no kids allowed. There was a nice hot tub, and there were several hot tubs throughout the boat, but little kids can get in those. But in this area, the Serenity area, no kids were allowed. And a lot of our friends from our group each evening would go to the hot tub and just hang out and have a good time. So the amenities, I was impressed. I couldn't have asked for more amenities, I think, on the ship. There was plenty to do on the ship, a lot of things that you could sign up for and do. So I really liked that aspect of this cruise. And then our first port that we visited was Puerto Rico. I'd never been to Puerto Rico before, and so it was really fun to visit this. It's a United States territory, and so we got off and we were going to do a zip line tour. So I was really excited to do a zip line, and so we showed up to the zip line place and got our harnesses on, our helmets, and then we did some zip lining. It was a lot of fun. I like zip lining, and it was kind of a fun way to see a little bit of Puerto Rico as you're going across sliding on those zip lines. And then it was right there in the parking lot of the zip line, I was able to see some cool things like this, the tortoises or these big turtles. And then I was lucky enough to find one of my favorite fruits growing on the tree, the star fruit or carambola. And one of the groundskeepers helped me pick a ripe one, and it was so good. Here's a little video of me tasting that. So I am here in Puerto Rico, and I just got done doing the zip lines. And what I found here is a fresh star fruit. Star fruit tree there, and star fruit tree there. And I love star fruit. So I'm gonna give this a taste and see how good it is. It's really good. So good. Normally I would cut it up. And then I was able to pet an emu, which was really fun, petting this emu. So I just enjoyed my experience there. And then when we got back to port, we still had a couple hours left. And so we walked around town a little bit, Old Town, San Juan, and some cool things to see. I wanted to eat some authentic Puerto Rican food. And so we had this mofongo dish. And it's like a plantain, mashed up plantain in shape of a bowl, and they put like beef or chicken. I had chicken, and they put that inside, and that was really good. That was one of the better things that I've eaten on my whole trip. It was really, really good. And then it took like an hour and a half to finally get done with our meal. It was just really slow. And then so we had about an hour left. We walked around a little bit and went and saw one of the main forts there. on San Juan, and then we went back to our ship, and that concluded our Puerto Rico visit. I would have liked to have more time in Puerto Rico to see more things. That was one of my gripes. I wish we had maybe 2 days at each port, but I understand why the cruise ships don't do that long at each port. And then we were back at sea, and then the next day we wound up in the Dominican Republic. And so again, this was going to be a zip lining adventure, but also included with the zip line after we were going to go through these 7 waterfalls and do some jumping and some sliding. And so again, we got on, and so these 2 excursions, the one in Puerto Rico and the one here in Dominican Republic, those were organized by our tour guide, the girl that put together our whole trip for us. She organized those. We didn't book those through the Carnival ship, but there's so many different things that you can book through the Carnival. Like, they have so many excursions, like anywhere from like 8 to 15 different excursions that you can book through them. So I actually was impressed by the variety that they had. I just didn't book any of those. And then so we went to this park in the Dominican, and again we had this probably 45-minute hike up to the first zip line, and then we did the zip lining. It was fun. I love zip lines, and I like the zip lines I think better in the Dominican Republic than I did at the park that we did in Puerto Rico. They were just so much faster, and we didn't have to walk as far in between each zip line, and so that was really fun. And then at the end of the zip line, it was time to go through these waterfalls, and that wasn't my favorite part. The water was really cold, and I don't really like jumping into water that much. And the sliding was fun, sliding down the little the slides. But I prefer the zip lines over the water part, but it was still fun. And once we were done with that, we had some authentic food there, La Bandera. I think it's the flag or whatever. It's like kind of their classic dish there in the Dominican Republic. Rice and beans and like fried chicken and some other things I didn't really have on my plate that were available for you. And that was really, really good. I really, really liked that. Like, again, that was one of my favorite things that I ate the whole trip. And then it was time to leave once again, and we left and went back on the ship. And then the next port was Grand Turk from Turks and Caicos. I don't know how to pronounce Caicos. I don't know how you pronounce the Caicos part. But this was the main big island, and it's not that big. The whole island is like 7 miles long, I think, by a couple of miles wide. And so we got to Grand Turk, and this was an excursion that I booked through Carnival, and it was a catamaran ride, and then also a snorkeling trip, and then they took us to a private beach. That whole excursion was about 3 hours. So when we got back, we had plenty of time to explore and do other things on Grand Turk. And so being on board the catamaran ride, it was fun. There was probably like 80 to 100 people on board, and it was just a good time. They had music and stuff, and there was a lot of drinks and snacks that they had on there. And then we went snorkeling, and I didn't have an underwater camera, so I didn't really take that with me when I snorkeled. But it was a great time. The water was so clear, and it was not super warm. It was like 78, 79 degrees. Definitely a lot warmer than where I grew up in California. But I would have liked the water to be a little bit warmer, but it wasn't bad by any means. And definitely warmer than that water in the Dominican, in that river, or the little stream, waterfall, wherever. And so we did the snorkeling, and that was great. And then the private beach, and got to hang out and just enjoy the beach for a while. Pristine, white, sandy, powdery beaches and super crystal clear blue water. Kind of my idea of like the tropics, you know. And then we walked around, when we got back, we walked around. And again, I wanted some authentic food. And then one of the locals said there was a jerk chicken place down the beach. So we walked down there and got some yummy jerk chicken. And that was so good. Jerk chicken and this yellow rice and a potato salad. And again, this was one of the better things that I had on my whole trip. So the 3 local foods that I had at these local places were better than a lot of the stuff that I had on the cruise ship. So that was great. And then I just got to see more of Grand Turk Island, walking around with some friends and taking photos and whatnot. And then it was back on the ship. And then we had one last day at sea, the Friday before we came home on Saturday. And it was kind of like, I was sad already. When it was like Wednesday, even though I had half of the trip left, I was actually getting sad that I had to go home soon already. So I really enjoyed this cruise. I liked the ship a lot. It was a great first time experience for me. I love the excursions. I love the ports that we visited, different locations. The food was fine. It was good. There's some times where I thought it could have been better, but overall I was happy with the food on board the ship, and I really loved the all-you-can-eat ice cream and frozen yogurt. I liked pretty much most of the appetizers that they had. Just the main entrees I think could have used a little bit more work. And the other like little restaurants that they had that I was able to try, like Guy's Burger Joint, Guy's Pig and Anchor, and Shack's Chicken Place. Those were all fine. Those were all good. And so it was just a great cruise experience. I highly recommend it. If you've never done a cruise before, go on a cruise if you can do it, if you can swing it, if you can afford it. Carnival is the cheaper of the lines, I think, cruise lines. So it's a great first experience. If you can't do a 7-day one, maybe try out a 3-day one or 4-day one. But I really liked my first time going on a cruise, and I can't wait to go again. Let me know if you've ever been on a cruise and if you enjoyed your cruise. Take care, everyone, and happy cruising.